when you are actually not, what actually happens is that your insulin levels are down when you're not. Your metabolism switches gears. Your body is in fuel burning mode. So the longer you don't, the more excess fat you can burn. Our gut bacteria have, believe it or not, a circadian clock. They know what time it is. So when you eat late at night and you disrupt your gut bacteria, inflammation rises as well. I actually love. It's got chlorogenic acid. Chlorogenic acid also takes your white fat, the harmful wiggly jiggly stuff, and says, here's what we'd like you to do. We'd like you to start turning more into brown fat, healthy fat. If you want ultimate health, what you need to start with is understanding. There's three kinds of main fat. There's white fat, which is wiggly and jiggly, and it can be visceral or it could be subcutaneous, meaning under the skin. And then there's brown fat, which is paper thin and it's close to the bone, and it actually is good fat that generates heat to burn down harmful fat. But visceral fat is really the first kind. It's wiggly jiggly, and it's found inside the tube of your body. Visceral meaning gut fat. Visceral fat's the same thing. And if you think about it, it starts off like packing peanuts inside the tube of your body. It's a cushion to prevent, if you tripped on a rug and you fell on the floor, your organs are cushioned by a little bit of these packing peanuts, and so it's going to be fine. Now, visceral fat, by the way, has another function. It actually contains part of our immune system. I want to talk about the good part first. Our immune system, and I can tell you what it does. There's a specific organ. There's even a sub-organ of fat. Our whole fat is an organ. There's one part of our fat called the omentum, O-M-E-N-T-U-M. Most people who are not doctors will have never heard of it, because it is actually it's like an apron of fat, healthy fat, that crawls around our body like an octopus. You know, you ever see those videos online or on like Discovery Channel, the octopus is going around the rock and the reef, just looking for places to crevices to go into? That's the omentum, made out of body fat. Here's what it does. It patrols our abdomen, our belly, on the inside, around our intestines, doing a couple of things. Number one, it conducts surveillance to make sure there are no leaks or cracks or injuries to our gut. You know, our gut is full of bacteria, and our gut is actually full of poop. Can you imagine if there's a perforation, a tiny hole, or an injury, and all that bacteria seeps out from the tube of your intestines into the viscera, into the open cavity of your body? I'll tell you as a doctor what would happen. You would get septic, you would go to the ICU, and there's a good chance you would die. All right? So thank goodness for the omentum, this healthy fat, this octopus. It's kind of like a mix between an octopus and a baseball glove, and it basically cruises around your belly silently. You can't feel it, and it can get in between the intestines. Now look, your intestines is about 40 feet of a tube, all folded up, like packed into a suitcase, which is our belly. And the omentum conducts surveillance to make sure that everything is hunky-dory and actually fine, and there's no inflammation. Now, the omentum also, this is visceral fat, also secretes those hormones, leptin to help control our appetite, adiponectin, which is another hormone to allow insulin to draw our energy in, our fuel, our glucose, more efficiently into our cell, and resistin, which is actually to allow us to have a little bit less versus a little bit more energy drawn in. Okay, this is all healthy stuff. Now, the other thing that omentum contains, it actually contains part of our immune system. So think of our omentum like a battleship that contains ready-to-roll super soldiers inside inside the ship, and basically it's waiting there. And if it actually finds a little hole in our intestines, right? Think about all the stuff that we actually throw down our gut. If there's a little hole, little perforation, immediately that octopus, the omentum, will crawl over there. It'll stick out a tentacle and it will cup that area, and it will blast the super soldiers, the immune system, to clean up that area and kill the infection until it heals. All right. We used to call this the policeman of the abdomen, the omentum. So it's quite amazing. So, okay. So what happens, that's normal. I want to tell you normal because everybody thinks of fat as bad. That's all normal. If you actually grow too much visceral fat, and visceral fat also being fuel cells, and you just keep on piling up fat by overeating, by eating the wrong things, by disrupting your gut health, which then causes your metabolism to go haywire, and then it's easier to gain to develop body fat, then what actually happens is that those hormonal functions are disrupted. Basically, think about it like disrupting the hormones, like getting too much visceral fat is like you walk into a symphony hall that's in the middle of a performance of, Beethoven's symphony, and you get in there and you just jump on stage and start throwing, stuff around, emptying a garbage can on stage. You're going to disrupt everything. The music is not going to flow. And that's what actually happens when you develop excess visceral fat. It's dangerous for several reasons. Number one, those hormones, leptin, adiponectin, resistin, all the things that control how well and efficiently we use our energy, all thrown off course. I don't know. Do we want to absorb more energy or less energy? I can't tell. It's too noisy in here. All right. That immune system super soldiers, well, guess what? They're thrown out of whack as well. They're like, whoa, I don't know what's going on. And so basically your fat unleashes these super soldiers as inflammation. All right. Now you've got inflammation instead of defenders of your body. Now they become inflammatory cells, and they are all over the place, spilling out over your guts. On top of that, if you grow too much visceral fat, and remember, fat normally is a fuel tank that stores the energy into fat cells. If you overstuff that area, the fat will leak out. Okay, it's just like overfilling your gas tank at a gas station. Boom, it comes out, it rolls down the side of the car, around your tires, or on your shoes. It's a toxic, dangerous, flammable mess. At the gas station, same deal. When you have overflowing fuel, fat will leak out of fat. A liquid will leak out of fat cells, which is supposed to contain them like a fuel tank. And that leaking fat poisons your liver. It's called lipo, meaning fat, toxicity, meaning it's poison to your liver. And in fact, that's actually the cause in our world of abundance of something called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD. This is actually a hidden epidemic that is leading to hepatitis and leading to liver cancer when you poison your liver. And by the way, your liver detoxifies your whole body, detoxifies your blood. You damage that organ with leaking excess fat, man, we are in a world of hurt. So what I'm telling you is that normal healthy fat, think about it like an orchestra with a conductor that plays a beautiful symphony. Everybody's in harmony, doing their thing, and it's a performance for your whole life. And when you actually grow too much visceral fat, it's like rushing on stage with garbage cans and dumping them out and completely disrupting the performance. That's how bad it actually is. Imagine if you are somebody who doesn't get a chance to eat very much. Maybe you're on a budget, and so you have to watch what you're buying and what you're eating. Like many people are like that. You're going to be really grateful when you actually have something good to eat, right? And maybe you'll eat 3 times a day, maybe you won't, but every time you have food, you'll be appreciative, and you'll think about the value of what you're actually eating. Now, let me give you a different scenario. You're a kid thrown into a candy store, all right? Now you're surrounded by everything, and someone tells you, go ahead, there's no limit, get anything you want, right? So you're going to go first, you're going to be excited, you're going to dive in and start eating everything. But pretty soon, you're confused. You don't know what to do anymore because you're just surrounded by overage. And I think this is true on the behavioral level, but it's also true on the cellular level. When we actually are surrounded with overabundance, it confuses the system in our body. It can overwhelm our metabolism. And so what we want to do when you ask, oh, how do you eat? When do you eat? What do you eat? One of the things we want to do is to be moderate. Don't overeat. That's easy. Quit the clean plate club. All right. Don't pile on to your plate. You're not preparing for hibernation. So you want to actually be careful that you are taking just the right amount. Stop eating when you're 80% full. There's a Japanese saying called hara hachi banmi, and it basically means, if you eat slowly and you feel like you're satisfied but not full, push the plate away. You're not a member of the Clean Plate Club anymore. You're fine. Thank your host. Thank whoever cooked the meal, and be grateful that you had it. You don't need to keep on eating. That's the whole thing. All right, you can just stop. That's the sort of like how to eat. When to eat? Look, remember I told you, when you are actually not eating, for example, sleeping, what actually happens is that your insulin levels are down when you're not eating. Your metabolism switches gears to fuel burning mode. So when you're sleeping, you're also not eating, which is also called fasting. When we get up in the morning, we're breaking our fast, which is why we call it breakfast. Break fast. When you're not eating, your body is in fuel burning mode, burning down extra energy in those fat cells that got stored up. Remember? So the longer you don't eat, the more energy, excess fat you can burn, and it draws it first from visceral fat. Now, this is sort of like a when to eat. If, for example, you sleep for 8 hours a day, and I've talked about this with many people, you should try to sleep 8 hours a day. That's best for your health. Let's say you sleep from 11 to 7. If you eat dinner the night before, let's say it's 7 o'clock, and the time isn't so, the exact hour time is less important than the concept. You eat dinners at 7, you finish at 8, put your dishes away. Don't eat a late night snack. No midnight snack, no noshing. Don't wait for your dessert to eat later. So many of us were trained over time to have this habit of finishing dinner and just eating continuously, maybe out through the night or definitely before sleeping, eating something. Look, every time you put your dishes away and then you're still snacking, your insulin's going up. Now you're cutting into the time. Do you want to actually get more fat burning time? This is the how to eat. Stop when you put your dishes away. Don't eat anything else. And now let's say you go to bed, you eat at 7, you put your dishes away at 8, you go to bed at 11. You've just gained 3 extra hours of fat burning time. How awesome is that? And it's very easy to retrain yourself to having, you're not going to, believe me, you're not going to perish in those 3 hours. And then what I do myself is I keep track of this. So I get 3 hours before bed, I get my 8 hours of sleep. In the morning when I get up, I don't immediately rush off and eat breakfast like when I was a kid. I take my time to get ready, to get showered, to change, get dressed, and then I might go out for a walk, or I might read a book, or I might check my email or something, and I'm not eating yet. I usually wait for an hour after I get up before I eat anything. Maybe even longer sometimes, like this morning I didn't eat for a couple hours after I got up. Guess what? I just gained 1 or 2 extra hours of fuel burning. Do the math. 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock, 3 hours. 11 o'clock to 7 o'clock, 8 hours. That's 11 hours. Now you give yourself 1 extra hour in that morning. It's 12 hours. There's 24 hours in a day. And now you have spent half the day allowing your hardwired metabolism to be in fuel and fat burning mode. How good and how easy is that? And I'll tell you one more thing. They've actually studied this. Late night eating, food late night. So, we get extra glucose, high levels of insulin. Just you said, it's not so good for our metabolism. But guess what? We're also feeding our gut microbiome. And studies have shown when you eat late at night, like snacking late at night, like midnight snack, all right, what happens, you're feeding our gut bacteria. Our gut bacteria have, believe it or not, a circadian clock. They know what time it is, and they know very well that when it's time to get ready for bed, they shouldn't be fed. When they are fed, your gut bacteria are fed late at night, they have trouble digesting and metabolizing the food that they're eating to create their short-chain fatty acids, which, by the way, they normally do to lower inflammation. So when you eat late at night and you disrupt the circadian cycle of your gut bacteria, they don't make the same degree of short-chain fatty acids. And guess what? Inflammation rises as well. So not only are you not getting a good night's sleep, your inflammation in your body is rising as well. And on top of that, your gut bacteria is getting confused. Like, this is, by the way, why shift workers often have difficulty with their metabolism. If you're setting out to try to lose weight and burn fat, okay, and by the way, you want to do this to gain inner health. Vanity, I'm totally cool with vanity. You should if you feel good by looking good, go for it. But what I am concerned about is really, as a doctor and as a scientist, how do we actually gain inner health? If you're good on the inside, by the way, you're going to look better on the outside, no matter what. It's just that if you only work on the outside, but you're really kind of having problems on the inside, that's just cosmetics, and inside could have a real problem. So what I always tell people is that if your goal is to actually lose weight, intermittent fasting, it's a trend, but it's really not something that was invented in order to create a trend. It's the most natural thing we do. Just eat, we intermittently eat, and we intermittently don't eat. So we fast and we don't fast. So, but research has shown, if you actually go 12 and 12, 12 eating, 12 not eating, as I told you, Totally fine. In fact, studies have shown that you can lose about 10 pounds, by intermittent fasting, like that, 12 and 12. If you want to lose more, you gotta up your fasting period. You can ramp it up almost 30% if you actually then crank it up to 16 hours of fasting. So 16 hours of fasting is basically like going to bed the same time I told you. But remember, I told you you've got 12 hours if you don't eat breakfast until 8. Now you got to gain an extra 4 hours. So you got to not eat. So you skip breakfast and don't eat till lunch the next day. You'll get your 16 hours. Now, research has shown if you do that, and yes, you're giving your body extra fat burning time, you will lose extra weight, but you'll actually start losing weight just with a very reasonable 12 hours. But don't forget, intermittent fasting is a continuum. It's a scale all the way to starvation. All right. If you got wrecked on a desert island with no food, yeah, you'd be intermittently fasting too. But eventually you would actually be starving. And when you starve and you overfast, the problem is that you can actually cut into your muscle mass and you'll start to destroy your muscle mass. What's worse than actually gaining body fat is gaining body fat while you're losing muscle mass. So got to be really careful about this stuff. And I think that just reasonable approaches for reasonable people usually is something that people can stick with, and that's how you get better health. If you fast for an extraordinarily long period of time till you're starving, your bacteria are actually going to start dying as well. They're not being fed. They need food. It's like not feeding your goldfish, your tank for a long time. So that's the extreme. Reel it back, okay? And now what's amazing is actually when you give your gut bacteria a break, proper break, but when you're eating, you're eating healthy things. During the fasting time, your bacteria reboot themselves. That's really quite amazing. They reboot themselves by first getting rid of bad actors. It's like purging the neighborhood of the crack dealers. All right, and our gut bacteria, 39 trillion. They've got a whole variety. It's a very diverse ecosystem. But the problem that we have when we suffer from bad gut health is really we've got a few bad bacteria that are growing. Some of these bacteria, when they overgrow, can actually be even lethal if we don't watch out, like C. diff and Pseudomonas, other types of bacteria that we see in the hospital as doctors. But generally speaking, when we give our gut bacteria a break so that they're not overly taxed all the time with food, then they can actually reboot themselves. When they reboot, they're also lowering inflammation more effectively. They're supporting your immune system. They help your immune system reboot as well. And they also participate in all kinds of other healing functions that are also beneficial as well. So again, this is all just leveraging the systems that are already present in our body. We talked about the eating and the time restriction of time-restricted eating and fasting. We talked about all these other tricks as well in terms of how not to overload your food and whether you should snack or not. But all these other factors that you're bringing up, staying physically active so you can burn that fuel, getting good enough sleep so that your metabolism is switched into fuel-burning mode, and managing your stress so you're not in a chronic state of tonic stress, so that your metabolism is derailed and you're in a chronic state of inflammation from your body fat. All these things play into each other. If you want ultimate health, what you need to start with is understanding how do we orient our body and our behavior in that direction, right? You want to head north, you got to figure out where north is first. So I think number one, understanding that our metabolism is very, very important. That's why I chose to write the sequel to my first book, Eat to Beat Disease. I chose to write about metabolism, and I called it Eat to Beat Your Diet, which is a trick title because it's not a diet book. It's an anti-diet book, which is how do you find your North Star when it comes to health? By looking for your metabolism. Our metabolism is something we're born with, and it functions, helps us keep going until the day we die. And we want good energy. We want efficient use of energy. And we want to actually use every body part and its perform in our every organ in the best way it can over the course of our lives. So to get towards that ultimate health, understand your metabolism, the engine that drives you in the right direction towards ultimate health. And if you want to take care of your metabolism, allow your body to do what it is hardwired to do, go through those 4 phases, leverage the fact that when you're not eating, your body's burning down fat, which elevates your metabolism naturally. Make sure you're taking good care of your gut health. Don't eat too late. In addition to the effect on your metabolism, it also can mess up the circadian cycle of your gut microbiome. And then they get confused, and now they're not playing ball with you either. And so all these different kinds of aspects, play into adding exercise, physical activity, making sure you're getting good quality sleep, and finding ways to cope and manage stress. I have a biochemistry background, so I'll tell you vinegar is actually made of acetic acid. Acetic acid is what gives vinegar its pungent, potent smell. And it's the same thing. It's an apple cider vinegar. Any kind of fermented fruit will actually do it. Red wine vinegar will do it. Raspberry vinegar will do it. Black vinegar, balsamic vinegar will also have acetic acid. And it's the acetic acid in vinegar that's now been discovered in research, both in a lab and in a clinic with humans, that actually burns down harmful body fat. Okay, burns down visceral fat. What does it actually do? It actually slows the ability of your metabolism to load up fat cells as fuel tanks. Remember I told you, you load it up, it gets bigger and fatter 100 times? Yep, ACV, but the acetic acid in all vinegars prevents that from blowing up so quickly. So the fat doesn't expand quite as fast. That's just preventing fat from growing. But what about burning it down? It turns on your brown fat. Brown fat actually is like the space heater. And when you actually have the space heater going on, what you're actually doing, and again, I'm going to show you a little demo. This is your brown fat, and you have apple cider vinegar. It actually turns on the brown fat. It's a special kind of fat. It's paper thin, pressed close to the bone, and it turns it on. Look at that. Look at this flame. Okay, that flame has to consume energy. Where does it get the energy from? From your visceral fat. It just steals that energy and it burns down harmful fat. So apple cider vinegar will actually do this. Now we know in a lab it'll actually cause obese diabetic rats to lose weight. In humans it'll decrease body fat and it'll decrease waist size, which is your visceral fat, the fat inside the tube that we started talking about at the beginning of this podcast. And so, and by the way, you don't need to have very much apple cider vinegar. I was very, very surprised to see how modest of amount of vinegar you need to take to have an effect. Even 1 tablespoon of ACV, and this is from a clinical trial, that you split up into drinking half of it in a glass of water or kombucha or something, and after breakfast and 1 after dinner, that's enough to start triggering weight loss and fighting body fat. You double that, you go to 2 tablespoons a day, split it up, put it into a beverage so you don't dissolve your teeth when you're actually swinging it. Tomato juice is a great way because now tomatoes also have some extra fat fighting. You'll actually improve and increase the amount of weight and body fat you're going to burn down. So again, that's an example of a food that actually is mighty in terms of its effect on your metabolism. I actually love pears, especially in the fall and winter. There's nothing I love more than a really ripe pear and when it's in season. And what do pears have? Pears have a lot of dietary fiber. Dietary fiber helps your gut microbiome, help feed your gut bacteria. Your healthy gut bacteria helps to streamline your metabolism, helps make your body more sensitive to insulin, so your glucose, your fuels, absorb more efficiently. But also it's got chlorogenic acid, which is different than acetic acid. It's a different acid, chlorogenic acid. Chlorogenic acid, by the way, also turns on your brown fat, but chlorogenic acid also takes your white fat, the harmful wiggly jiggly stuff, and says, hey, by the way, taps on your shoulders, hey, by the way, here's what we'd like you to do. We'd like you to start turning it more into brown fat, healthy fat, helpful fat, useful fat. And literally, your wiggly jiggly stuff goes, you know what, okay, I'll do that. And so you can actually use pears, the chlorogenic acid in pears, to help to convert some of your harmful white fat towards brown fat. And in fact, it will also tell your stem cells that might create another fuel tank. And rather than making more white fat, it might say, hey, buddy, over in the other direction, don't make more fuel tank for white fat. Go ahead and make some brown fat. It can actually have stem cells make more brown fat. So I'm going to come up with a fairly complicated food but it's very tasty, and that's pomegranates. All right. Now pomegranates are they've got seeds with a little rim, a little layer of juice around it, and pomegranate juice is really pressed from those seeds. Some kinds of pomegranate juice actually is pressed through the skin of the pomegranate, and most of the polyphenols are actually found in the skin. And so how the juice gets pressed can make a big difference. You get a lot more polyphenol with juice that's pressed through the skin. All right. Now, pomegranate juice, we know, contains a natural bioactive called ellagitannin. Ellagitannins actually do some pretty amazing things. One of the things that it does is it actually fights harmful body fat, white fat. It activates brown fat, lowers inflammation in fat. So all these good things that we actually know. It also affects the stem cells of fat as well. So these mechanisms are redundant, okay? So that way you can swap and switch, and it's not like you got to eat the one thing all the time. Thank goodness that we can actually have diversity. Now, the other thing that happens with ellagitannins is that when we actually consume them from pomegranate juice or seeds, it actually, when it gets to our gut, our colon, it helps our colon secrete mucus. Mucus is very normal and healthy, and that mucus loves, there's a particular gut bacteria called Akkermansia. In fact, it's called Akkermansia mucinophila. The first name is Akkermansia, the last name is mucinophila. That's genus and species. And the mucinophila means that this is the bacteria that loves to grow in mucus, and your gut normally makes it. The more Akkermansia you have, Akkermansia is a guardian of your metabolism. All right, it helps you burn down body fat, helps your metabolism be streamlined. In fact, people who are very slim, if you look in their poop and you look at how much Akkermansia they have, they tend to have a lot of Akkermansia. You go to somebody who is overweight or markedly obese and you look for Akkermansia, it's hardly there at all. It just shows you the power of just one bacteria in your gut bacteria that can be grown like fertilizer with pomegranate juice. Now, the other thing about pomegranate juice that actually is really important about these ellagitannins is that it actually helps to control the blood vessels that might be growing into feed expanding fat. Remember I told you, the bigger the fat you're growing, the more it will try to outgrow its blood supply. So one way you can actually tame it so it just can't grow that large is by cutting off those extra blood vessels that's trying to grow. It'll still get a little inflamed. Eventually it's going to die back. It's like, oh man, we give up. We can't get any bigger. And so it turns out that ellagitannins from pomegranate juice are anti-angiogenic, meaning they prevent extra blood vessels from growing to feed body fat as it's trying to expand. And so here's a way to yoke back expanding fat that's trying to grow out of control by keeping them from growing, getting their own private blood supply. By the way, this is the same approach that's been shown to have an effect, a beneficial effect, in cancers that are trying to grow out of control. You can yoke back the growth of these undesirable tissue by actually preventing blood vessels or preventing angiogenesis, excessive angiogenesis from happening, so you can have just the right number of blood vessels, not too few and not too many. Hey, if you like that video, then you're going to love this one. Check it out.